We're going to cast our minds back to the time where Ben Reid would reflect upon Collingwood's 2024 form woes, as well as his thoughts on Darcy Moore and what he needed to do in the moment to bounce back out of the form slump that he was going through on an individual level. I found it quite interesting to hear it from a ex-Collingwood player, premiership player, someone who follows the club fondly and has had strong ties with the club through Joe Richards as well. So let's have a look and we can reflect upon after we go through it all.
You talk about intensity and we talk Collingwood in 2024. We find early in the season, maybe the energy was lacking. You can talk premiership hangover. You can talk a myriad of things. The system's not working. And then we bounce back and we put ourselves in a really strong position, going 4 weeks back. And then we sort of regressed to a certain extent. What are you seeing, mate? Like, what are you seeing? Are there too many spot fires for Collingwood to overcome right now to find ourselves in a top 4 position or an opportunity to go back to back?
Yeah, I think at the moment there's been so many moving parts of the team this year. They haven't had that cohesion every week. Where last year they probably had it for a lot of it. People forget though last year that they lost their last 3 games going into the finals.
Yeah.
So, they can turn it around. I think when they're playing at their absolute best, I still think they're one of the best 3 teams in it when they're playing their best footy. They've probably just got to piece it together for longer periods of time, and they probably look a little bit disconnected in some parts of the ground at times. The defence at times looks a little bit disconnected to what it probably has been, but I don't think they'd be sitting there saying our season's stuff. I think they'd be sitting there going, where if we can get these little things right and turn it around, then I don't reckon there'll be too many teams that will want to play us. And they've obviously got some injuries, but as we've seen, they've had some good players out and probably played some better footy. So it's not so much about the names in the team at the moment.
Yeah, interesting. That is interesting. Like when we were, I guess, finding our feet, we were missing the Degoes, the Meyer checks and bits and pieces, Tom Mitchell still, Scott Pendlebury, and they come back and we think we're going to go an extra level. But I guess, like you said, it just goes to show sometimes if the system isn't doing its thing, then I guess that's the first thing that's going to break and lead to, I guess, a form slump, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think anything with AFL now, like any team, any week can beat anyone. So the competition has probably never been closer. So if you are off, 5-10%, you're probably going to get your pants pulled down. So, and you can see the ebbs and flows in games. I mean, you've only got to look at the Cup GWS game. I reckon most people would have turned it off at quarter time.
Yeah,
and then you see what GWS did for the next 3 quarters. So it really, a lot of it from the outside looking in, a lot of it looks like it's sort of between just bring that intensity for the whole 4 quarters, and the team that does that across those 4 quarters generally wins.
Like, we don't want to highlight players because, like I said, we understand it's the system that matters first and foremost. But if you're Ben Reid, coach of the Collingwood Football Club, we haven't even asked you if that's an endeavour you want to go down later in the future. Yes or no?
I'll wait and see. I've got to do a little bit more.
And that's a yes. You heard it here first.
Pies Footy first. But if you say you're in Fly McRae's shoes, and look, like I said, the system is important, but I guess there are times where you may have to attend to some form slumps on an individual level and try different things. With someone like Darcy Moore, who's been, I guess, massive in the spotlight of mainstream media lately, I mean, outside of patting him on his shoulder and just telling him to keep persevering, is there anything, I guess, positioning-wise, or like whether like starting position defensively, or would you entice a move down forward? How would you approach it without knowing too much about what's going on between the 4 walls? Is he carrying an injury? How would you try and approach that situation, given, I guess, the sample size that you've seen?
Yeah, it's tough. Well, without being there, it's really hard to comment on it. But knowing Darcy and the sort of bloke he is, he'd be doing a lot of work on it. At the moment, I think sometimes it almost looks like when he's going for these spores, he's trying to almost go too hard at times, and he's just misjudging the ball a little bit. But at the same time, I think it could be 1 quarter and he's back in form. It's not going to take long for him to. He's too good a player. He's got too much talent for it not to turn around. He'd be no doubt doing the work at training. talking to the coaches, working out what's best for him. And I've no doubt he'll bounce back. He's a too good a player for it not to happen. But yeah, at the moment, he's obviously in a little bit of a form slump, but one that I think he can get out of pretty easily.
Can you talk, obviously having played with Darcy and playing similar positions at certain times throughout your career, tell us about Darcy internally. Like, people say he looks uninspiring on the field. He doesn't have that leadership trait, and it doesn't hurt him when he's down. Is that quite the contrary from when you look at him internally, like what you see on the training ground? Like, does it means a lot more to him than what people might be making it out to be?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can only speak for when I was with him. I mean, it's been 4 years since I played with him now, so it's been a little while. But what I remember of Darcy, he's just so willing to learn and get better every day. Whenever you're trying to give him feedback, he'd be so invested in that. And I've no doubt he's still the same. As I said, he's just in a little bit of a form slump. Being captain of the footy club, it's probably been looked at a little bit more than what it would otherwise. And it doesn't help when the team's not playing great footy either. So
yeah.
Look, I think for anyone out there that thinks he doesn't care about his footy or wouldn't be working on his footy, then they obviously haven't been inside the footy club too often. He's loves the Collingwood Footy Club. Obviously grew up around it, and I've got no doubt he'd be doing everything he can to not only get himself in form. He'd be hurting more about the losses more so than his own form. Like he'd be more about, all right, how can we win as a team, more so than what have I got to do to get. He'll be thinking about himself as well, but he'd be more interested in the team winning than him playing really good footy.
Yeah,
that was very interesting to hear and listen back on, given the fact that was recorded probably just before the Geelong game, where the Collingwood side had the 2010 Premiership reunion night, where Ben Reid had attended, and yeah, he didn't get a lot wrong. He had the belief and the faith that Collingwood would bounce back, and we did. We did bounce back out of that form slump from the Geelong game, Essendon, so on and so forth. There was 2 form slumps that spring to mind in Collingwood's year. It was the first 4 games, and then that phase just after that bye, that mid-year bye, where we really struggled in that 4-game stretch. It was like Gold Coast, Essendon, Geelong, and someone else that I can't quite remember. North Melbourne, you can throw that in there, even though we won. But he got a lot right. We did bounce back. It just took time. And the time it took too long. Because by the time we had bounced back and we won 3 of our last 4 games, the season was unfortunately done. But he said we're a top 3 side when we play our best footy, and we showed that in those last few games. Just the confidence we're taking as a fan base, as a club, into next year, along with the free agency acquisitions that we've made in Harry Perryman and the trade for Dan Houston. I think we have a lot to look forward to. And if Ben Reid is speaking that optimistically, and he has no ties with the club officially, so he can speak his mind and speak honestly, and he doesn't have to pull any punches, and he was very optimistic. So that was encouraging to hear from a ex-professional player that played for Collingwood. It was also positive and refreshing to hear someone outside of the 4 walls at Collingwood speak in a different light with regards to Darcy Moore. The mainstream media were always harping on he's done, he's playing awfully, he should hand over captaincy, all the bad things you could possibly think about that were tied to Darcy Moore. And he comes at it from a different lens, understanding that form slumps are real and there's a lot of things you need to battle more than just an individual level. And sometimes it just came down to Darcy Moore being too overzealous and wanting to impact contests for the betterment of his team. And lo and behold, Ben Reid was right. He did bounce back in the end. And Darcy Moore will take that confidence, that perseverance in that treacherous period for Darcy Moore is going to go a long way for the rest of his career. And Ben Reid speaks on it and it comes to fruition. We've seen it after he said the facts, the suggestions that Darcy Moore will bounce back. And I think we'll see a refreshed, revivified and a different version of Darcy Moore from a mentality level. The mental fortitude that he would have built in this season can't be spoken to enough. Words can't explain it. I think we'll see that next year. We'll see that when Darcy Moore speaks on it whether it's next year or after his career is all said and done, he'll talk about this time and how it built him into the man he is today and going into 2025. So hope you enjoyed that, guys. We'll try to reflect on some more moments from podcasts with players like Ben Reid and reflect on it and take that into 2025. Go Pies.